Hello. It's been quite an uneventful day. I've just listened to the news on RT, and the most interesting thing that I can remember is they were saying how unprepared the EU is for the coronavirus, as well as the migrants that Turkey has weaponized and is sending its way, and is sending to Greece. Oh yeah, and soon America will be a second world country when the dollar collapses. So this is all good news, is it? Well, people say these things about it is always darkest before dawn. It has to get worse before it gets better, and it's still true. But of course one doesn't want to be too much inconvenienced by the transition from worse to better. So these problems are, well, I suppose it's not going to be that long before the future is here, basically. So RT was saying, or one of the RT journalists was saying, how shocking it was to see the American president poo-poo the whole coronavirus thing, going around shaking hands with people, campaigning for election, little knowing how what would happen if the virus got into his lungs, and this applied to the whole political classes. And you think, oh my goodness, they're all going to be dead from coronavirus, these American politicians in in election year. And the EU are not better prepared. Perhaps the UK is marginally better prepared, though the message on the coronavirus is mixed. You can think, oh, it'll be all right. I mean, I don't know until I go to the shops, I suppose, and I hope I won't see them too empty. I'm making a point of not panic buying, simply because people will eventually accept that it has to take its course in the same way. In the same way that the bubonic plague had to take its course. How did it? I suppose I could examine that. It went all over Europe, didn't it? It wasn't something I studied when I was at school, so I can learn as I read about it. I mean, really, if we're worried about our own individual, lives and whatever, in the broad sweep of history, of course, it doesn't really matter if few of us live to, our 80s. Oh yeah, well, one of the things mentioned was that the coronavirus death of boomers will benefit the millennials, who are burdened with student debt and that kind of thing. So where did it come from originally? It came from Eurasia, killing 75 to 200 million people in Eurasia. So it came from Central Asia. Oh dear, it seems to come from the Orient. And of course, there was a kind of globalization in those days with the Genoese merchant ships spreading throughout the Mediterranean basin. So really, this kind of spread is not new at all. Why do I find it so funny? I don't know. You have to laugh, don't you? Or you'll just cry and get, totally neurotic about it. So, we're kind of in two minds about, well, shall I go out, shan't I go out? And you think, well, if I'm going to pop off, I might as well have fun. And just do the things I feel I need to do, rather than stay home neurotically, thinking I can avoid death, when, you could just be really unlucky. I don't know. I suppose you marginally, if you just stayed home and self-isolated, you'll just be better off. But I mean, there is this thing about, if you want to live longer, then give up all the things that make you want to live longer, and then you will live longer, but then, that's a trade-off. So, the Black Plague came from Central Asia, Kurdistan, Western Asia, North India, and Uganda. So due to climate change in Asia, rodents began to flee the dried out grasslands to more populated areas, spreading the disease. Is it alright? Can you all hear me okay? Just checking the chat. 3 people watching. I guess that's alright. But one of the first attempts at bioterror was the army catapulting infected corpses over the city walls to infect the inhabitants. So it was first introduced to Europe via Genoese traders from the port city of Kaffa in the Crimea in 1347. During a protracted siege of the city by the Mongol army under Jani Beg, whose army was suffering from the disease. Gosh. So there was this marching army and they caught the plague. So as the individual soldiers died, the other soldiers would catapult infected corpses over the city walls of Kaffa to infect the inhabitants. And then the Genoese traders fled from Kaffa, taking the plague by ship into Sicily and then the Italian mainland, whence it spread north. So even in the Middle Ages, they couldn't exactly close down their borders either. So it reached Sicily in 1347, carried by 12 Genoese galleys. So it rapidly spread all over the island. And then there was an outbreak in Pisa, where the tower leans even now. And then it arrived in France, in Marseille. Then it got to France and then to Spain. And it liked the summer. Because the epidemic raged in Spain in the early weeks of July. And then Portugal and then England by June 1348, and then spread east and north through Germany, Scotland, and Scandinavia from 1348 to 1350. It was introduced to Norway in 1349, and then, it got as far as Iceland. And finally, it got to northwestern Russia in 1351. So, Mecca got it in 1349, and then it came back to Baghdad and it experienced a second round of the disease. So let me just find you where it got to. It reached Alexandria in Egypt, Constantinople, the Black Sea, Gaza, Lebanon, Syria, Israel, and Palestine, including Ashkelon, Acre, Jerusalem, Sidon, Damascus, Homs, and Aleppo. Muslim religious scholars taught that the plague was martyrdom and mercy from God, assuring the believers' place in paradise. For non-believers, it was punishment. Okay. Some Muslim doctors cautioned against trying to prevent or treat a disease sent by God. Others adopted many of the same preventive measures and treatments for the plague used by Europeans. These Muslim doctors also depended on the writings of the ancient Greeks, who also got the plague. There's some horrible pictures. The modern ones as well about that. I'm looking at the Wikipedia entry. and it causes the skin of the fingers to turn black. Why am I doing this? Well, it's just that people think, well, okay, they always say bubonic plague is the worst possible thing you can get, so, just go for the worst one. And then I suppose, if you do get the coronavirus, it'll be, oh, well, at least it's better than the plague. Anyway, it's treated by antibiotics now. So the fatality rate for the modern bubonic plague is 11%, but it would be higher in undeveloped regions. So, symptoms of disease include fever, headache, painful aching joints, nausea. Okay, that would be kind of like flu, nausea and vomiting, and a general feeling of malaise. Left untreated, of those that could contract the bubonic plague, 80% die within 8 days. Well, that's nice and easy to remember. Pneumonic plague has a mortality rate of 90 to 95%. Symptoms include fever, cough, and blood-tinged sputum. As the disease progresses, sputum becomes free-flowing and bright red. Septicemic plague is the least of the 3 forms of the bubonic plague, with a mortality rate of 100%. Septicemic plague, that does sound very nasty. But the point is, it didn't kill the Europeans. So, it's not the end of the world. It's not the end of your civilization. Okay, I think I'm going to retitle this. I mean, I didn't know what I was going to talk about because there was just so many things swimming. But I think it might attract more interest if I called it something else. I don't know. Is it too late? What shall I call it? Epidemics and pandemics. Hello, Vincent. But it's interesting, isn't it, how the Muslim doctors were dealing with it, saying, well, if you don't believe in God, then regard getting the plague as punishment. But if you do believe in God, then think of it as a way of hurrying you to heaven, where everything will be so much nicer than it is now. What does civilization even mean? John 7 asks. Well, I would say that civilization is a state of human development that allows humanity to live in cities. So it has, you would have the organization to, sort out your agriculture and, have the ability to make all these people live in a concentrated area that is a city. So you would, have some way of maintaining public health and, giving your people, clean water supplies, and then you have your agriculture sorted out. Your communications, your roads, and just just getting the food into the city and markets and commerce and trade and just all the organizational structures necessary for life in the city. So it presupposes a greater degree of sophistication and law, and rules, of course, rules to keep so many people living together in an orderly way. I guess in the olden days, some people just wouldn't be able to behave themselves, and will be fighting with each other if they're forced to live in such close proximity. So yeah, if you're a city, you will obviously have a certain idea about yourself, and I guess it's the beginnings of a nation state, because it all starts off in a city, doesn't it? With Athens starting off as a city, all these city-states you can think of, the Vatican, Singapore's a city-state. Troy, Carthage, that kind of idea. Well, Rome was a city-state, which expanded and expanded until it became ruler of the known world. Why are you talking about planes, Vincent? I kind of, I didn't. Okay, I'm getting notifications about the Saudi princes being accused of treason, being thrown into the dungeon or something. So this is what civilization is, and obviously pre city living means that you're not quite so sophisticated as a people, and your rule of law won't be all that interesting, I guess. I mean, you'd have to have all sorts of things like rules about how you live, and probably even things like which side of the road to drive on or walk on, and all these little things that you would never have to consider if you lived in the country. And from this, more civilization develops. You become a nation state, and then I guess an imperial nation if you're lucky to have things go your way for a bit. Well, John 7, I think people already know they're humans. So what you want to impress upon these people is the idea of their particular group. So it's the smallest possible kind of launch pad for a kind of group consciousness. I suppose tribe would be too primitive, because you think of primitive African tribes when having their tribal warfare over, bits of land. So, one thing above being a mere tribe, a wandering tribe even, would be to be a city-state, and then you will have this sense of group consciousness, like, oh, we are Athenians, we are Romans, and I guess there would be a sense of pride, civic pride, that will eventually help you build your nation, I suppose. And all this boils down to rules and morality. So, I'm thinking of the Jews, finally getting Israel, and then how did they? Okay, so basically they took over Canaan, and I think they did also suffer the Black Death while they were wandering around for 40 years. Israelites timeline. I guess that's what I need to know. So it was established in 10th century BC. So it was established in the late Bronze Age. I know so little about it, really. So the Bronze Age came before the Iron Age, and the two Iron Ages, Iron Age 1, Iron Age 2, Babylonian period, Persian period, Hellenistic period. Ooh. Well, it's a bit difficult for me to absorb and kind of regurgitate for you guys. What can we talk about now? Really, I wanted to talk about a particular subject. And, okay, I've done the bubonic plague. It's not the end of the world. It's not the end of the world for your civilization, even though perhaps it might claim a few of us. So John 7 says, you see, Darwinism is everyone for himself. Now, would that work? Because if we didn't cooperate when attacked by the enemy and just fled without fighting because we think that's the safest course of action, then we actually will end up not, being in a worse position than kind of fighting back, because then we would be displaced from our land by the invader if we didn't fight him. So sometimes you have no choice. You have to fight, and you also have to accept the risk that some of you might die in the process of defending your territory. But at least it would be an honourable death, because if everyone just simply fled when the enemy arrived, then then you all die an ignominious death, without territory, without property, wandering around as refugees, being turned away with tear gas and by unsympathetic nations saying we're full up. So it's not necessarily a good idea to be cowardly and also run away, because then everybody will know, these are the people who will run away the moment you invade them. So let's just keep attacking them, because they'll just run away and it'll be so easy. So so that is not really the most clever survival method, John 7. A better way would be to, develop one's defense strategies, and I suppose ensure that you have enough men to join the army, so you increase the likelihood of fighting a successful defensive war. But yeah, it's interesting to, it's timely to be reminded about bioweapons. And we think, it's something that you cook up in a laboratory, but actually, the ancients did it, a long time ago, by catapulting the bodies of infected corpses over the city walls. What ideal were you talking about, John 7? But the disorganization is I suppose telling. I wish I could really, really, really work out, whether the Chinese are more effective than the West at preventing the spread of the virus, and or whether there's any point even trying to prevent its spread, because just reading the history of the bubonic plague, it's like it happened anyway, even with the best will in the world, because people will be running away from the plague and coming to infect you. Because the rats ran away because they lost habitat or something, and then I guess, if your city got infected by the plague, then you'd be running to some other city to escape from it, and by doing so you infect others. It's also how famine behaves as well. So you are in a place where there is no food, and so if you can move, you would move to a place where there is food, and then you probably end up eating all their food, and then you cause them famine, and so you will be moving with them to go somewhere else to find food, until eventually, well, it's not a nice scenario, is it? So in a way, we are very fortunate. Let's hope let's hope that our deaths are going to be reasonably comfortable. I know people say, "Ooh, but I don't." Why? People have this idea of, the kind of death they want to die, I suppose, and they think, "Oh well, I don't want to die alone," and it's like, well, I don't want to die, homeless and rejected, because I have the plague or something, and nobody, people will shoot me on sight. I've never tried bats, actually. VOE, COE's personality particle. I'm not really sure what it is. I don't think it's something you can see. As far as I can remember, it was something you. There's something that's left of you after you are dead, and it contains all the elements of your personality, and you find some fetus to invade, and that's where you lead your next life. I've tried hot dog. It's all right. I prefer hamburgers. Now, I haven't actually tried dog, not the Bow Wow kind. Who's to say that I don't know. You sort of think, oh, I wouldn't have this, I wouldn't have that, and then and then it's served in a dish before you, and it seems all right. It smells right, it looks all right, and then you end up eating it. I have tried a few disgusting things in Beijing. So if you ever go to Beijing, there's this place where you can, this special place, which is, I think you have a version of it in other parts of other cities, and you get sort of bugs, really. And I remember I was walking, through that area with other tourists, and then I saw this Englishman, and he was eating a satay stick full of scorpions, baby scorpions, and it was a combination of sort of horror and disgust, and it was the rest of us just sort of looked at him and say, "Oh, that's yuck, disgusting! How could you?" And then it's like, where can I get it? And then we found this place, and it's like, who can find the most disgusting thing to eat and be photographed eating? And I'm afraid that was what we did. No, I haven't tried cat. Human ideals are what make a civilization. I wouldn't call them ideals. I would call them rules of morality that methods of governance that allow a kingdom to survive. Because obviously, you need you have all these people living in close quarters. Therefore, you need to organize them. You need to give them a purpose. You need them to know their place, really. So that's why you have Solon, kind of reorganizing the whole of Athens, because something was obviously not working, and he divided them into 4 castes, basically. And India has a version of this system, and I notice a lot of Europeans who find Hinduism romantic. People like Jen, they seem to favour the caste system, but of course they always assume that they're going to be they're going to be a member of a high caste. They never think, well, I could be a Dalit, I could be one of the lowly ones. So they always assume that they're going to be a warrior, a priest, a merchant, but nothing to do with the lowly castes. But I think for meritocracy, you need there to be social mobility, so that you can rise within your lifetime if you do the right thing. You're industrious, you're talented. So this is what we want to happen. For the fruits of our hard labour and industry to be rewarded within our lifetimes. Or just people just wouldn't try. So they have to think that they're going. They have a reasonable chance of succeeding if they try hard. Otherwise they'll just be criminals, and you don't want that. And so I think social mobility is necessary. Not because I'm such a bleeding heart person, but I think social mobility is necessary to stop people from getting complacent. So that's how I would organise society. I'm afraid I would have to reintroduce slavery. I know a lot of people are shocked and horrified by the idea. But even with these migrants, I did ask somebody this, complaining about migrants, of course, and I was saying, well, would you offer them accommodation in your home and feed them if they were your slave, rather than somebody presuming on your hospitality that you just let in and live as an equal with you as a guest. So that does change the whole complexion of the arrangement. So this person who hated the whole idea of migrants just blackening Europe, by their swarms, would be quite happy to accommodate these people if they're going to be helpful, going to help them with their business, tidy their garden, drive them around, and just do all the jobs they don't want to do. So so status is something that can be easily monetized. Yeah, it's something that you can, obviously trade with and bargain with. So it's sort of like, you really, really need to get into the lifeboat because your cruise ship is sinking, and and this person who has a right to not let you on, might let you on if you say you're going to, you know, be in a subservient, submissive position, and help him do whatever you have the particular talent to do. And of course, the question of status is very important to our sense of self-esteem, and I guess materialists don't really get the idea because they just see numbers, figures, averages, GDP, and without taking into account the individual sense of well-being for the people that make up the GDP. So I'm suggesting really that under secular Quranism we have a different way of measuring objectively national well-being. So instead of thinking, the GDP has increased this year, we're doing so awfully well, we're going to be saying the crime rate isn't so bad anymore, and the suicide rate, it's not so bad, and that fewer people are getting divorced, and fewer unmarried parents, and then you kind of, I guess, amalgamate all these indicators of human happiness in a way that can be objectively measured in a kind of basket of well-being kind of thing. And I think I would like to try that instead of measuring national well-being with GDP, which is it's just making people buy stuff and spend money and all that, just to, well, I mean, that would lay waste to the environment, wouldn't it? And of course cause people to build all kinds of hideous buildings all over the countryside and all that. So I think that aesthetic architecture would be nice. Well, would be essential really in instilling a sense of civic and national pride. And I think a lot of the unhappiness that a lot of men and women feel is because I bet they can't even explain it to themselves. It's this feeling of unease. It's this feeling that their government doesn't care about them, and worse than that, doesn't know what it's doing, or even worse, its members are the puppets of some sinister deep state, and that kind of thing. And so what we need are simple things like trust and confidence in our government and our currency and each other, and the that good will be rewarded and evil punished. And so this would bring back a mindset that I guess most people would be unfamiliar with. I mean, they might have heard it, about it from, as something that happened in history, but I don't think it's impossible to bring back. I suppose you'll be saying, oh, but you're just one woman, and you look at your. So I have 6 people watching now. It's like, who's going to listen to me? But I think my message is so simple. And it actually can be done. If only somebody were listening. And of course, this is a problem of our age. Everybody thinks it's somebody else's job to do the necessary. And then they won't. It'll be, who, me? You expect me to do something about that? But I'm only, some powerless, member of the cabinet, or some powerless prime minister, afraid of so many things, afraid who knows what excuse they'll come up with. And so I'm saying that is exactly the problem. The way government is organised, the way our politics is being conducted, it's all wrong. And nobody will admit it. Nobody will discuss it. But what people will do is entrench their positions and just double down on their original idea to begin with, and just stick to that brand, that supplier of the same old, and ignore me, I guess. But I'll continue, simply because I don't know what else to do, really. It is, I suppose, interesting to hang around and see, who else gets the subscribers. And it's not that they're particularly original or talk that much sense. People just want the familiar, even though it doesn't make much sense. This is what I have observed. And a lot of people have no particular point to make. They're just here for the LARP, as Jen would say. Such people are, unfocused and not really interested in doing anything constructive, or don't see it as their role to do anything constructive, and have no particular ambition to do any kind of political activism. And I suppose it would be quite easy to ignore me, but of course the political establishment will ignore me, and the anti-establishment factions will ignore me because I'm sort of not at one with them on their anti-Semitism and their Islamophobia and their racism, and so. Are you sure that Asian immigrants poop on the street in California? What a terrible thing to happen. Why do you allow it? I guess you'd have to poop in the street if you didn't have a toilet, then where else would you poop? But can't you move them somewhere? And this is why I think secular Quranism comes in that these people are homeless. If they're able to do any work, then of course they should be given the opportunity to work. And obviously, if they're slaves, they would have to be accommodated and fed by their owners or hirers. And if that's the only way that you'll take all these needy people in, then I guess that's what you'll have to do. And formally you would have to reintroduce slavery, which would be an alternative to welfare, and it's a good way of sending the message out that nobody gets anything for free. Okay, you might lose your job, your home, and if you don't want to sleep rough, if you can do some kind of work, then you might be hired as a slave. Or bought as a slave, rather. But what has this to do with our lives currently? Well, from the way things are going, from what I hear on the news, it does seem that we're coming up for some significant changes. Very soon, I hope we'll all be able to deal with all these changes that are coming our way. Barry Champion, you want me to give you the link so that you can... what? Talk to me? I don't know who you are, Buried Champion. I'm actually about to close the stream down. Yes, as I suspected, one subscriber, no content. Alright then, I'll finish for now. I've been talking about nearly an hour. There's no need for me to just ramble on. But I'll try and sum up what I just said, which is that slavery should be reintroduced as an alternative to the welfare state. Even if the coronavirus or the bubonic plague, we would just have to take it on the chin. And, obviously appreciate all the wonderful things that we've been able to enjoy so far. Do you ever ask yourself what you'd be grateful for if you were to end your days tomorrow? Is there any particular thing that that makes your whole life worth it? I suppose we must remember to be grateful. A few more interesting comments. Saying I want to change. Well, I'm just proposing solutions to what I see are your problems. So, do you disagree with my solutions? And have you any better ones? Or are you just saying that because I wasn't born here, I have no right to express my political views? I have thought them through quite carefully, It's my problem too if I live here. It's a problem of anyone who lives here. So I think anyone is allowed to make suggestions. I'm saying that, look, you people will not think anything of criticizing the government of a country that you've never been to. So you can't be too surprised when other people do the same thing to you too. So do you think it's some sort of divine punishment? I was saying the other day that it was a bit like God stamping his foot to test your ability to notice him, I suppose. Because I guess a lot of you deny his existence. And I think the game will always be that, it's always 50-50. He could exist. Anything that happened might not really be because of him. It could have happened anyway. And really, at the end of the day, we always choose whether to believe, and we would be choosing whether to believe on the basis of whether we want to obey the laws. And we would only decide to obey the laws if we think they're fair enough and that we could benefit from obeying the laws. And I suppose it is the role of politicians to within the parameters of what the laws should be, make certain policies more attractive or less, or to change the law. So I think that's what politics is all about, and coming up to many interesting changes very soon. Oh, right. Oh, you're from OV Stream, Buried Champion. Well, he doesn't really have that many people on, does he? I mean, it's usually him and SS, and I can't bear to listen to SS. How am I the issue? Just little old me? Why would I be the issue? I'm just one little voice that everyone ignores. I couldn't possibly be the issue. Well, Dr. Mengele is probably... What time is it? What time would it be for him now? He's probably asleep, having a lie-in. He was quite active earlier in my last stream. We can't expect him all the time. I don't know which statement you think I'm agreeing with you on. Wilhelmer Olive. Okay, I've said enough, and I'll say it just under 1 hour. So thank you for coming by, and yeah, talk to you again soon.